with an update on Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar and Cody Rhodes accused of pulling a publicity stunt. This is Wrestling Hub. My name is John and you're watching the Wrestling Report for January 18th. Before we get into the rest of the video, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Hub and turn on all notifications to stay up to date with everything in the world of pro wrestling. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at WrestlingHubOfficial and also follow us on Twitter at Wrestling_Hub. With it announced that she'd be making a return to WWE for the Women's Royal Rumble, Summer Rae told Renee Paquette that she was concerned that Vince McMahon wouldn't recognize her with red hair. When they called me about Rumble and stuff, at first they were like, would you be interested? Would you even consider it? That was like the second thing that I said. Oh, I'm redheaded now. I guess Sasha has every hair color under the world and Naomi, but I think I look extremely different and some people don't even recognize me, especially on socials. John Cone was like, John Laurinaitis and I will bring it up to Vince. I remember saying it in front of my sister and she was like, don't use it as an excuse. It's not an excuse. I can't just show up like this and Vince see me and be like, who the hell is that? Then they called me last Friday and said Vince wants to announce a couple of people tonight and he's thinking about announcing you. Just a heads up, your socials are going to surge. I'm thinking, I haven't told any of my best friends. I'm going to look like such a bad person. I hadn't told anyone because I didn't want anyone to ruin the surprise. When it happened, I was a little taken back. That stinks. It was supposed to be a surprise. Also, in my head I was like, I'm going to use this to market the crap out of me and what I'm doing. When I'm in the gym, it's Road to Rumble. I can reignite my beef with Natty. Bailey wrote me and started putting me over. I talked to a bunch of the girls and they were like, it's an insane match to put together. Everything changes until the moment you walk out. How is that even possible? I have no ego and feel I'm easy to work with and think producers have a time with the matches with the personalities and egos and getting your stuff in. I would love to have a Total Divas moment and maybe a spot with Natty and then wave to my friends. After Roman Reigns was said to have COVID, he was pulled from the Day 1 pay-per-view, which led to his original opponent for the event, Brock Lesnar, being added to and winning the WWE title match. Now that Lesnar and Reigns are both world champions, Dave Meltzer pointed out on Wrestling Observer Radio that this was not the original plan. I was told no, that they just did it because those two guys had the belt at the time, so it made sense to do it at the time, but at the time that was not the direction they were planning on. Lesnar and Reigns are going to have a match. I think we'll have a lot better idea of what's going to happen after the Rumble, but if Seth wins and then Lesnar's wrestling Roman, I would presume Roman beats him to win a belt back, because Lesnar's not going to be around long term and Roman will be around every week. And then Rollins. I don't know what their plans are as far as how long he would go long term. They could have Big E beat him, or they could just keep Seth going. They could have Lashley or Kevin Owens. I mean, there's a lot of different ways they can go. The match is still set to take place in Dallas for WrestleMania. We'll have to see how things fall into place for this bout. Talking about the potential title versus title match between Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar at Mania, former WWE referee Jimmy Corderas noted that this would make the singular championship even more special. The big story on SmackDown was Roman and Brock. You can continue that leading up to WrestleMania. Like you said, title versus title, a huge unification match. That makes that championship mean so much more. And then this one champion can basically go to both brands and be a special champion. You don't see him every week. I know people will say, we want to see our champion more. Your champion should be special. You should only see him sporadically. That makes you want to see him that much more, at least in theory. During an interview with TV Source magazine, Charlotte Flair touched on the negative attention she gets from fans, and she is not going to keep apologizing for her success. I just wanted to come back unapologetic. I just couldn't keep apologizing for what I've accomplished. If someone else was in my spot, they wouldn't apologize for being there. I realized I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. I just had to own it. I will never understand why people think I should be content with what I've done. I don't want to be that person that just feels like I've peaked. I always come back hungry because there is so much more that I can do. Men's careers end after 5 years, they don't get criticized for wanting to do more and be better. You don't tell the men that they have an expiration date on their careers. No woman should have an expiration date. Speaking of the SmackDown Women's Champion, Booker T took to his Hall of Fame podcast recently to encourage Charlotte to open the Forbidden Door and face wrestlers from Japan. Of all the female wrestlers around the world in the business, Charlotte Flair ranks right up there with the best of them. She genuinely does. So to put someone in the ring with her, you definitely need to have someone in the ring that's believable. Perhaps that's where the Forbidden Door opens. If Charlotte Flair was to step in the ring, if that Forbidden Door was open to one of these Japanese stars, should any of them show up at the Rumble just to challenge Flair? For me, that's money. I think that's where we have to go in the future. In order to get our talent in the company to a place where we want them to be, they need more talent to work with. Since returning to the road in July, WWE has not been doing well with ticket sales for their events, with it noted on Wrestling Observer Radio that Raw brought in the smallest crowd since the beginning of the pandemic. By the way, this was the smallest crowd for Raw, second smallest crowd I believe since the pandemic. They were just a little over 3,000 paid, so that's pretty brutal. I think the only one that was lower was the San Francisco one. They had less people than AEW had for Raw Live for Wednesday and Friday show, but WWE, it looked better. They'll go in there with 4,000 people in a building and they know how to set it up and everything to wear. It looked fine on television. It wasn't even dark or anything. It was recently reported that Cody Rhodes did not renew his deal with AEW and has been working for the company without a contract since the end of last year according to Fightful. Now, Meltzer has noted in the Wrestling Observer newsletter that a top-ranking AEW official informed him that Cody's contract situation could simply be a publicity stunt. With more news sure to come regarding this, we'll keep you posted. Following a shocking release from WWE, Braun Strowman has made appearances for EC3's Control Your Narrative and Ring of Honor, as the two, according to CBS Sports, will be teaming up on March 7th in Dubai for what is being called the biggest wrestling event in the Middle East. It will be hosted by the United Wrestling Nation, United Arab Emirates. With his WrestleMania 37 plans reportedly cancelled by the company and him getting into an argument with Vince McMahon backstage, Mustafa Ali has requested his release from WWE. While he has not been officially let go by the promotion, Ali went on Instagram to show off his recent training session. On the Talk and Shop podcast, former WWE and ECW star Rhino recalled the time he met Hulk Hogan at a WCW show. "I get booked. It was a pay-per-view. It was Macho Man and Ric Flair in the main event, and Macho Man had his dad, Angelo Poffo. So back then you could rest with the boys, right? So I'm sitting next to Angelo Poffo, talking, watching Hogan, and he could see that I was watching him out of the corner of his eye. And he didn't have to work. He was just walking down halfway, and then security had to pull him back. I was supposed to wrestle Road Warrior Hawk, just to do a job before the pay-per-view to air on TV, but Hawk didn't show up. So they just go, we might have you dress as security and hold Hogan back. And I thought to myself, I'm going to touch him? And I'm like, so they don't use real security. I'm in the business for like 6 months before that. At 21 years old, Rhino watched Hogan closely backstage as he saw Hulk drink several beers before his match, which led to Hogan no longer being Rhino's childhood hero. All of a sudden, he had his own little locker room. There was a cooler, you know, outside, where they put the pop in. He reaches in there and pulls out a beer. And I thought to myself, I'm training, I'm learning carbs and all that stuff. He's got abs, and I'm like, the kid inside of me took over. He said, train, say your prayers and eat your vitamins. He said nothing about beer. Yeah, he was 44 at the time, so I know he's over 21. He's legally able to drink. He's not wrestling. I'm doing all this in my head, right? And I'm watching the monitor, right? So this still lives in my head rent free. So I'm like, okay, you know what? One beer, I'll excuse it. The child inside of me excuses things. Maybe it's a ritual. So then he grabs another one. So I'm like, my dad could drink 18 beers and not get messed up. So Hogan can have 2. Now I'm comparing this. Then he grabs a third one. Now I'm concerned, right? Not because of him getting out there and doing his job. Now I'm concerned because of my childhood image of him as being destroyed. So I'm making more excuses, right? Then he'd drink a 4th one, and then a 5th one, and I'm really starting to get upset. Well, by the 4th one, the Big Show comes back because that's when he was sitting in the audience. They would show, and then they would walk off. He had the trench coat, him and the Big Show, the Giant. Okay, his buddy came back, so he has to have a beer with his buddy. So that's like the 5th one. So here comes a buddy, have one with him. So he drinks his beer, and I go, you know what? I'm done. He's not my hero. I wish I never got booked for this. I still haven't forgiven him. I need an apology from him. Alexa Bliss recently made a return to WWE programming with her seen as a part of a therapy session on Raw. Many fans are not too excited over this angle as Bliss took to Twitter to address those critics, writing, "Sometimes you just need to be patient and see how things play out." With Austin Theory recently picking up a win on Raw over Finn Balor, WrestlingNews.co put out a report saying that his role in the company is to put over younger stars now. Yeah, Finn was moved into the spot that Jeff Hardy had. He's just there now to help get over the younger guys. There was a pitch to make him heel, but that was weeks ago, and I haven't heard much about it since then. Vince never saw Finn as more than just a mid-card guy. Heyman would have pushed him to the moon, but Vince just never saw it. Austin Theory is going to get time to shine in the Rumble match. Last I heard, he will be in the final 4 or 5 at the end of the match. With wrestling stars like Lance Storm not impressed with Wardlow's match against CM Punk, Ryback has gone on his podcast to talk about the similarities between this bout and his own match against Punk at LMSL 2012. I think what they were doing with Wardlow was working. I don't believe he should have taken the pinfall. I believe he could have achieved everything that they did, which I thought was good, and I understand why they did it by continuing the story with him and MJF on the turn eventually with that. Also, continuing the feud with CM Punk in that ongoing saga, you have a guy on TV now doing the matches and getting over. He is getting over. It took time with him, but I thought this is how he should have been booked from day one in my opinion, but it is still working because people are getting behind it. He is wrestling how he should be wrestling. I believe they could have done everything they did with that and have MJF barking the orders at him, and have Wardlow exit the ring and do the whole deal outside the ring and get a 10 count and be counted out. I believe that would have been better than him taking a pinfall with a guy that you were making a monster on television that does not need to take a pinfall to CM Punk. I'm talking firsthand because I was red hot. I did not need to be taking a pinfall to Punk. It did nothing for me. It does nothing for anyone to take a pinfall by him, by the way, in this day and age with him. That is just my opinion, but it is what it is. A lot of things were good in that, but I did not like him taking the pinfall, and I thought he should have been counted out, and they could have achieved everything they did and have the confrontation with MJF, and they could have done that entire thing to get counted out on that, but I am not there, and I'm just looking at it like everybody else, but I enjoyed what I saw. And this was your Pro Wrestling News Update. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.